Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today we are going to start with a new system, and that is the respiratory system. Dear students, this is a very important system, and its importance is so much that you are going to have one SCQ and 5 MCQs from this chapter. And if we are going to talk about as your pathologist, as a life of a pathologist or as a life of a clinician, you are going to see that every clinician is going to see the x-rays, or they are going to talk about cardiogenic shock, they are going to talk about pulmonary edema. So these are the things that you are going to see these things in your wards on a normal basis. So this respiratory system is the basics of all of these things. If you know the basics of your respiratory system, how it works, how your lung works in collaboration with your heart, then it is easy to understand. So the basic pathophysiologies, basic pathologies, if you remember this, you are able to interpret the diagnosis, and you are going to treat them accordingly. So success is basically always by doing again and again about your idea, thinking in a different way. So we are going to do the same. If in one way you are unable to capture these things, we will try our level best that I am going to tell you in another way. And the life is also like that. If you are unsuccessful because of any other thing, then keep on doing the same thing again and again. If you are going to see this thing, you can see this is a histopathology of the lung, and here we are going to talk about two types of these cells. One is the type 1 pneumocyte, and the other ones are the type 2 pneumocytes. So here are the type 1 pneumocytes, and there are the type 2 pneumocytes. As you all know that these type 2 pneumocytes are very important in surfactants, in releasing the surfactants. And then inside we are having the endothelium and the capillary lumen, and from here the whole of the exchange of the air is going to take place. So this is the area from where the exchange of the gases, oxygen is going to take place, and also the ventilation perfusion we are going to see in this area. If you remember this thing from your previous knowledge, that if something bad is going to happen, if water is going to come inside this area or anything like this which is going to come inside this area, then the oxygen cannot diffuse from there into the blood. So there will be no oxygen. So if there will be no oxygen because of anything that is going to hinder the oxygen perforation or the ventilation, then there will be the problem. So this diagram is very important. You should know about the roles of the pneumocytes, and you should know that this alveolar space is always accompanied with the capillary lumen for the exchange of the oxygen. So the first pathology that we are going to discuss today is atelectasis. Atelectasis is basically an incomplete expansion of the lungs during the neonatal life, or because of the collapse of the previously inflated lungs because of any other pathologies. So types of the atelectasis are resorption atelectasis, compression atelectasis, and contraction atelectasis. As you're going to see in this diagram, this is a very beautiful diagram explaining the causes of the atelectasis. So it could be because of some compression. Here you can see that because of some compression, there is the atelectasis or the collapse of the normal lung parenchyma. So the lung from this normal size has been collapsed to the smaller size, So there, because of the compression, there could be atelectasis. If there is an airway obstruction and it is going to block the bronchi or the bronchioles completely, then there is a atelectasis. From the normal side, it has gone into this size. But then because of the hypoventilation, because if patient is not ventilated profusely, or because of some fibrotic or scar diseases, here you can see there is a fibrosis of the lungs. Because of this fibrosis or lung of the lungs, there is the atelectasis. So atelectasis, as you see, is the unexpanded lung. So if there is unexpanded lung, whether it is a fully lung or whether it is a part of the lung, then it is going to be called as atelectasis. And here you can see this is your normal lung, and here this is your atelectatic lung or a collapsed lung. Because of this, because there is an inflammation, because there is no oxygen, as I have shown you, the leukocytes come into play, there will be the inflammatory reactions, and further there will be the adherence formation in between the lung parenchyma. So the causes of the lung atelectasis, as I have already told you, are the compression atelectasis, compression atelectasis. Here you can see this is the area of the atelectatic lung. Then resorption atelectasis, because of any of the obstruction in the bronchi or the bronchiolar region. Here again you can see this is the atelectatic area. And then the contraction, because of any fibrotic changes in the lungs, then it is going to be called as contraction atelectasis. So lung atelectasis can be caused because of the blocked airway. Here it is because of the blocked airway, or it could be because of the external pressure on the lungs, which is the compression atelectasis. So if there is an external pressure on the lungs, it is going to cause the compression atelectasis. And how it looks like to you on the x-ray, here you can see this is your very much normal lung. This is your normal lung, and here no lung. So the lung has not expanded at all. So this is the atelectasis, total atelectated lung. Left lung is atelectasis. First of all, we are going to talk about the resorption atelectasis. Dear students, as I have already told you that the resorption atelectasis is a consequence of the complete obstruction of the airway. And because of the complete obstruction of the airway, there is a time which is going to lead to the resorption of the oxygen that is going to be trapped in the dependent alveoli without the impairment of the blood flow through the affected alveolar walls. So there is a blockage in the airway. So due to the blockage in the airway, we are not going to have a problem into the perfusion area. So the whole problem will be in the ventilation. So here you can see that this is the bronchi or the bronchiole, and here there is an obstruction. Because of this obstruction, the lung is going to collapse, and because of the collapse, there will be the decrease in the size of the lung, but the ventilation is compromised, but the perfusion will remain so because blood flow has no problems in the affected lung area. If we are going to talk about the resorption atelectasis, lung volume is going to be diminished and the mediastinum is going to shift towards the affected or the atelectatic lung. So this is very much similar. This is your affected lung and this is your normal lung. So the mediastinum is going to be shifted in the x-rays toward this affected lung. So towards the affected lung. Just remember this thing, because this is the differentiating point between the resorption atelectasis and the other types of atelectasis. We are going to talk about that soon. So the resorption atelectasis is principally caused by the excessive secretion or the mucus plugs. You have seen the patients of the chronic bronchitis or the bronchiolitis or the bronchiectasis, like in and also in the asthmatic patients with the acute exacerbation of the inflammatory condition. There will be the increased mucus plug formation, and we are also having increased mucus plug formation in the cystic fibrosis patient. So anything which is having any problems with the secretions, anything which is going to cause the exudates within the bronchioles, whether it is a small bronchiolar neoplasm within the bronchi or the bronchioles, whether it is having mucus plug, whether it is having inflammatory exudate, this is going to cause the resorption atelectasis. Here in this example, you can see that this is a tumor in the main bronchi, and because of this, you are having the atelectasis in the low portion of the lung. And here you can see that the mediastinum is shifted towards the affected lung. So now we are going to do the second example of the second classification part of the atelectasis, and that is the compression. Compress. This is a very simple word. Compression is going to happen. So anything that is compressing your lungs is going to cause the compression atelectasis. So it could be fluid exudate, anything in the pleural cavity. It could be a tumor in the pleural cavity, it could be air in the pleural cavity, it could be blood in the pleural cavity, or it could be a tension pneumothorax that is going to result in the compression atelectasis. So with compression atelectasis, the mediastinum is going to shift away from the affected lung. Just remember this thing. This is the difference from the previous one, that here this is your affected lung, smaller lung, and this is your normal lung. And outside this, there is a blood in the pleural cavity. So here the mediastinum is going to shift towards the normal lung. So this is the difference from the previous one. So here you can see, because of the pleural effusion, there is resorption atelectasis, and because of this there will be the increased cardiothoracic ratio. Here we can see, so this is where we can see that this mediastinum is shifting towards the normal lung. Now we are going to talk about the third most important type of atelectasis, and that is the contraction atelectasis. So any problem in a lung which is going to cause fibrotic changes, or which is going to inhibit the normal contraction in the lungs or the expansion of the lungs, is going to cause the contraction atelectasis. So there is nothing wrong in the bronchi, there is nothing wrong in the bronchioles, there is no obstruction, no mucus plug, there is no air in the pleural cavity, there is nothing compressing outside, but now the problem is within the parenchyma of the lung. So it is just because of the generalized fibrotic or local fibrotic changes within the lung parenchyma. So in this condition, not only there is a reduced oxygen level, but there is also there will be the reduced blood supply, and this is going to predispose to the further infections. So the collapsed lung parenchyma can be re-expanded if we are going to do the exercises and the other therapies, and atelectasis is a reversible one, but it is not going to happen if it is going because of the fibrosis, or there will be the scars in the lungs, because then it will be the irreversible one. So here this is a summary of the atelectasis. Atelectasis because of the compression, and in the compression we have talked about the tumors, masses, pleural effusion, whether it is a transudative or the exudative one, pneumothorax because of the trauma or the spontaneous one, or the hemothorax or blood, air, we have already talked about it. Then the second most important type is that we have talked about is the obstructive type of atelectasis, in which there is an obstruction in the bronchi or the bronchioles which is going to cause this. Then the third one is the contraction atelectasis that we have talked about there because of the scars or the fibrosis in the lung parenchyma. And the fourth one is the patchy one, which is going to happen in neonates because of the loss of surfactants, or there is some problem with the type 2 pneumocytes. So now we are going to talk about the second most important thing, and that is the pulmonary edema. Pulmonary edema can result from any hemodynamic problems, or the hemodynamic or the cardiogenic or the other causes, or it could result because of the direct increase in the capillary permeability. The capillary permeability can be increased because of the microvascular injury. So the types of the pulmonary edema that we are going to talk about are the hemodynamic pulmonary edema, edema that is going to be caused by microvascular injury, and edema of the undetermined origin. So first of all, you should know that what we mean by pulmonary edema. This, if you're going to see here, these are your bronchioles, and these are the alveoli, and these are the very much normal alveoli, and the ventilation perfusion is going on very normally. But in a pulmonary edema, here you can see that there is a water. There is a water in the bases of the alveoli, and because of the water in the alveoli, the exchange of is not possible. Here you can see again a capillary which is very much normal, and alveoli very much normal, and here that is the buildup of the air sacs in the water. Water has been built up, or water has been present into the alveoli. So the hemodynamic of pulmonary edema is going to be divided into two major classifications. One is because of the increased hydrostatic pressure. You have already know about the Starling forces, and the number one causes of the Starling forces, or the number one factors that we are going to talk about, are the hydrostatic pressures. Then we are going to talk about the decrease on oncotic pressure. If we are going to talk about increased hydrostatic pressure, the most common cause of the increased hydrostatic pressure is the left-sided heart failure. Whenever there is a left-sided heart failure, you should remember this thing, that in the left-sided heart failure there will be the pulmonary edema, and in the right-sided heart failure there will be the generalized edema. So, and the other thing because that is going to happen because of the increased hydrostatic pressure could be volume overload. Then there will be the pulmonary vein obstruction. Because of the pulmonary vein obstruction, there will be the increased hydrostatic pressure, and also there will be the increased pulmonary venous pressure. The second most important causes of the hemodynamic pulmonary edema are the decreased oncotic pressure. The decreased oncotic pressure could happen because of the hypoalbuminemia, and you all know that hypoalbuminemia could result from the nephrotic syndrome. So the second most important cause of the nephrotic syndrome, or any other liver disease, if we are not having albumin in the body. So because of the liver diseases, in which the most common one is the cirrhosis. Then any problem in which the protein is rapidly losing outside the body, so protein losing enteropathies, or the most important cause is the lymphatic obstruction. If there is a lymphatic obstruction, there will be no lymphatic which is going to be reabsorbed, and so there will be the decrease on oncotic pressure. So we have just discussed about the increased hydrostatic pressures and the decreased oncotic pressure. First of all, we are going to talk about the increased hydrostatic pressure. As I've already told you, that it is going to happen in the left-sided congestive heart failure. So the most important characterizations are the pulmonary congestions and the edema, and they are going to be seen in the gross pathology by the heavy and the wet lungs. If you are going to see, I've shown you just shown you the diagram, that your alveoli are filled up with the water. So because of this, it is going to give you appearance of the soggy, boggy lungs. So fluid accumulates initially in the basal region of the lower lungs because of the hydrostatic pressure greater in this side, and there will be the dependent edema initially, but later on it could go upward also. Histologically, if you are going to see, where alveolar capillaries are going to be engorged, and there will be the alveolar microhemorrhages. And whenever there will be the microhemorrhages, the macrophages are going to come and they are going to eat it, and then these cells are going to be called as heart failure cells. These hemosiderin laden macrophages have specific name in the left-sided heart failure in the pulmonary edema, and these are called as heart failure cells. If we are going to have a long-standing pulmonary congestion, such as in the cases of mitral stenosis, then these hemosiderin laden macrophages or the heart failure cells are going to have another appearance along with that, and that is the fibrosis. And along with that, we are having the thickening of the alveolar walls, and because of this, we are going to have a firm and brownish type of shape of the lungs, and this is going to be called as brown induration. So if pulmonary edema is long lasting, then it is going to have a fibrosis, and because of the fibrosis and because of the presence of the numerous heart failure cells, then it is given as a name as brown indurations. These changes not only impair the normal respiratory functions, but also because there is a water, because there is a stagnation, and as you all know, wherever there is a water and there is a stagnation, there are the bacteria are going to go at that site, and there will be the infection. So here you can see that these are your alveoli, and in these alveoli you are having the edema. So there is a stagnation, so ventilation is not possible, and here the bacteria are coming and the bacteria are going to grow. So patient is not only having problems in the ventilation, but also having further problems because of the secondary infections. Our third most important cause is, as I have already told you, is because of the microvascular injury. As you know, the alveolar injury can happen into the infections like pneumonia, septicemias, or because of some inhaled gases like high concentration of oxygen because of the smoke, nitric oxide, liquid aspiration because of the GERD, gastric contents are coming up, or in the drowning stages. Then drugs and chemicals also have an important role in the microvascular injury, and the most important drugs that are going to go to the microvascular injuries are the chemotherapeutic agents like bleomycin, and we have other medication like amphotericin, heroin, kerosene, paraquat, and the addictive drugs basically. Then we are having the shock or trauma. In the shock and trauma, you all know that DIC is going to happen. So in DIC, we are going to have a microvascular injury and thrombi are going to form here. Then there are radiation injury. Then transfusion reactions, there will be the microvascular injury. You have already learned this thing in a transfusion reactions chapter. Edema that is going to be caused by microvascular injury is a very important mechanism, and you just have to remember that the pulmonary capillary hydrostatic pressure is not going to be elevated, but later on this hemodynamic factors are going to play their role, because first of all, the edema results from the primary injury of the vascular endothelium, and then there will be the damage into the alveolar epithelial walls, and because there is damage to the vascular endothelium, everything is going to leak outside. So there will be the leakage of the fluids and proteins into the interstitial spaces, and whenever there is a leakage which is going into the interstitial spaces and in the alveoli, then there will be the edema which is going to cause the further infections, and when there will be the diffuse alveolar edema, then it is going to cause the fatal condition that is also going to be called as acute respiratory distress syndrome. So my dear students, just remember this thing, that hemodynamically there is no problem, but because of the problem somewhere from the outside there is an injury to the capillary lumens or the endothelium, and because of this injury there will be the leakage first into the interstitial space and then into the alveoli. Once there is a leakage into the alveoli, there will be the fluid into the alveoli, and again the bacterial infections are going to come, and then there will be the secondary bacterial infections, and because of all of this there will be the ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome. So if we are going to see here, we have talked about two types of the pulmonary edema. One is the cardiogenic pulmonary edema, in which we have talked about the left-sided heart failure, and the other one is the non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, in which we have talked about the enteropathies, protein-using enteropathies. We have talked about microvasculature injury. We have talked about nephrotic syndrome. We have talked about livers. So anything wrong other than the heart are going to fall into the non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema. If you're going to see here, in a cardiogenic pulmonary edema, the basic thing is that there will be the increased hydrostatic pressure, and because of this increased hydrostatic pressure, alveolar flooding is going to happen, and because of the alveolar flooding there will be the protein pure edema fluid in this condition. But if we are going to see in the non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, the most important thing is that there will be the normal hydrostatic pressure, but because of the protein rich edema fluid, there will be the increased permeability because of the any injury into the microvasculature, so there will be the increased permeability, and alveolar is going to flood because of the increased epithelial permeability. And then the most important thing that we have talked about, that the macrophages are going to come and neutrophils are going to come, and there will be the secondary infection. So whatever is going to happen here, it's going to cause the pulmonary edema. Thank you very much, dear students. Hope you have understood both of these things. If you are having any problem, you can always ask us on the WhatsApp, or you can individually ask me on the email also. Thank you very much.